Howdy. If you're seeing this, then you know I'm no longer with you. I'm somewhere else entirely. I wish I could be here with you guys, but unfortunately I can't. I'm filming this on Friday. It's after 3:30. I've got my Giants tie on, planning on watching that game. Hopefully they're 2-0 at this point. But I didn't want to miss another day of learning. We still have a little bit to cover on 2.5. We have the test tomorrow. Again, it's still scheduled for tomorrow, even if I'm not there with you guys. It's still a little up in the air whether I will be. I do want to be there for you guys, though, too. But I did want to kind of cover and finish this PowerPoint. I thought it would be better if I can kind of explain, walk us through some stuff as opposed to just kind of, here's the information, get it, and then click. Some of it might be hard to read with the screen. Do your best. I will also do my best to kind of tell you what to write down and how to write it down so that it is effective for you guys. So 2.5, just kind of letting you know where we've been. We're talking about political participation. We talked about the different forms of political participation. The most frequent being voting. That's right, you guys said that, I'm sure. We know that in terms of voting, U.S. is relatively low in terms of the percentages when compared to other countries, with the exception of Honduras. Got Honduras beat. We know that for presidential elections, the percentage is typically between, what two numbers? 50 to 60. At midterms, it gets about 30 to 40%. We talked about the different voting blocks, the different demographics and how they vote, whether they vote left or right, how frequently they participate. And then lastly, we talked about the reasons why they do or do not vote. Some of the reasons that people don't vote. Actually do this. Person to the left, share it with the person to the right. Some of the reasons why people do not vote. Person to the right, call them out, when they forget some stuff. Please do that now. Ah, yes. Excellent. Main reason why people do vote. Main reason is for civic duty. They believe that they have this kind of intrinsic value when they take part in the political process. Kind of moving forward, title I've got split ticket versus straight ticket voting. Split ticket voting is when candidates, when people vote for different candidates from different political parties. So, for example, if I am voting in the current election, I vote for the Republican Donald Trump, and then I also vote on the same ballot for our Democratic Congressman Mike Thompson. That is split ticket voting. Split ticket voting can also be for different political issues. Sometimes the Republican Party would like you to vote for this proposition this way on this law. Others, the Democratic. So you're splitting your ticket between political parties. And what we've seen historically is that split ticket voting has decreased. That far more people are voting on straight ticket votings. So if they're voting for Democratic Hillary Clinton, they're also voting for the Democratic Senator and the Democratic Congressman. And then the propositions, they're voting in a way that the Democratic Party would like. This has been on the rise so much that on some ballots, some states have this on top, you can either check Democrat or Republican, and it will automatically fill in the rest of the ballots how that political party would vote for the current election. And this is kind of sad, right? We want this notion that we're not so tied to a party, but we can make our informed opinions without one like a political party saying this is how we should really vote, right? So again, this would be an example of kind of split ticket. John McCain for the Republican Party, but I'm still voting for the Democratic candidate Al Franken in the Senate. A little bit of vocab that you might see. Registration requirements. Voting is a two-step process. First step, register to vote. Second step, you actually cast the ballot and vote. So registration laws, really election laws in general, are done by A, the federal government, or B, the state? Votes for A, the federal government. Votes for B, the state. Good. Hopefully you raise your hand for B, the states. States set their own election procedures. You do have, registration laws do vary by state. North Dakota, they do not allow. You don't have to register to vote. So registering to vote is really just another hurdle that you have to step over in order to vote. Most states, it's anywhere between 50 to 30 days prior to the to the election you vote. California, I believe it's 15 days to vote, so you've got a little bit of time if you're still considering whether you'll be of age or not to vote. In most countries, though, they do automatically register you to vote. You don't need to write that down. And then one other little bit I'll give you is the Australian ballot. So this term Australian ballot, in case you see it on AP test. And what the Australian ballot is yes, elections are done by states. The states vary from state to state. The ballots vary from state to state. The Australian ballot is this effort to try and prevent voter fraud. They're going to standardize what the ballots look like, make them more uniform. The idea that states cannot manipulate them for their own bias or slant. So Australian ballots is a ballot created by the state governments to prevent voter fraud. And really registering itself to vote is done in an effort to prevent voter fraud. We want to make sure that those that vote are citizens, they are who they say they are, that sort of thing, that there's no misgivings about them. A little bit of a quick check for understanding. Voter registration requirements and processes are determined and controlled by who? Take 26 seconds, answer that question. Check with your neighbor, make sure that they got it. We just went over this. The answer, votes for A, votes for B, votes for C, votes for D. Hands up for D. Awesome. States determine that. It is one of their reserved powers. However, with cooperative federalism, linking back some stuff we covered in Unit 1, we do see an effort for the state to kind of get its hands into this, or the federal government to get its hands in the state's business. Again, cooperative federalism. There has been this effort to increase registration. The idea being, though, if more people register to vote, they'll be more likely to vote. So they're trying to figure out how that first hurdle, that first step in the voting process, they can help and make it easier for us. The best example of that is the Motor Voter Act. Say motor voter 4 times. Go right now. Motor voter, motor voter. It's a little tough. Anyway, the motor voter, not just fun to say, but kind of an interesting law or an interesting act. When you get your driver's license, when you renew, when you apply for your driver's license, they'll also they'll ask you if you want to fill out a form in order to register to vote. Many of you guys probably just got your license within the last couple of years. Hopefully you remember that process. In addition, states have kind of also used public buildings, government buildings, schools. Libraries are probably the best example. You can walk just down the street to the public library and get registration forms and then send them in. That's how I got all those forms in the election board. Please, if you're of age and would like to register, you can do so when this is kind of over. You can also mail in registrations, and then some states allow for what's known as EDR, or Election Day registration. So at the same day, you can register and vote, thus cutting down that 15-day registration period. Cool? So again, fun to say Motor Voter Act. The underlying goal of the Motor Voter Act is what? That's right, get more people registered to vote. Here's kind of evidence of the Motor Voter Act. About 22%, 22% again, so 44% of people register to vote either when they get their driver's license or through the government buildings, the government registration offices, as well as the public libraries and such. There are some restrictions to voting, and I'm not just talking about voter ID laws. That would be more of a barrier, a difficulty in the voting process. This is outright restriction. You cannot vote if, one, you're mentally incapable of voting, so if you're mentally disabled. The idea being we want people to make informed decisions. If you do not have the capacity for that, they kind of exclude you from the political process. The other people that they do not allow to vote, in most states, again, election laws vary from state to state, it's the state's reserve power, is criminal convictions, felons. So if you break a federal law, they will not, in most states, allow you to vote. California, it's if you're in prison or parole, they will not allow you to vote. They do let felons vote. It kind of varies from state to state, but you can kind of see, based on the map, who's more conservative in terms of this or who's more liberal. You don't have to memorize this, but I'm just giving some facts. About 5.8, close to 6 million people are disenfranchised, shut out from voting just automatically because of this. They're either a felon or mentally disabled. The idea with the criminal convictions of felons, if you do not abide by the laws, you should not be allowed to make the laws or have any say in the lawmaking process. So these are outright restrictions to voting. And I apologize if I'm going too fast. You can pause the video, you can work with a neighbor. These will be up online for you to use also. Another effort to try and improve the voting process is the Help America Vote Act, or the HAVA, what was created in 2002. And it was created in 2002 out of large response the hanging Chad fiasco that occurred in Florida with the Bush versus Gore election of 2000. So this is the actual ballot that they used in Palm Beach County, where they were counting the votes and recounting the votes. What they had you do, this was a paper ballot, and they had like this thumbtack sort of, and you would poke in who you wanted to vote. And this is the actual ballot, and you can kind of tell it's semi-confusing, the arrows. I mean, most people could figure it out, but again, which groups of people are more likely than any other group to vote? The elderly. And elderly people, if you've ever, helped your grandma with the technological issue, that they take a little bit of time on things. So this was confusing to them. So with the HAVA, they again, standard methods for voting and standard ballots with the Australian ballots. They made voting electronic so that they didn't have to deal with these hanging Chad or the dimples or whether or not that was a poke all the way for this ballot. So it's all done electronically. However, again, you don't need to know this for the test. Most of these voting machines are outdated when they bought them in 2002. Technology is cyclical, and they're kind of cumbersome, they're large, they're ineffective. They will count, but they're not the best machines. The underlying purpose of the HAVA, the Motor Voter Act, these efforts to improve the system is the idea that if we believe that our government is counting our votes accurately and that the process is correct and there's no kind of shady business going on, that will improve voter confidence in the government, which will then improve the amount of people that are willing to vote, right? I'm not going to want to vote if there's might not even count it because of some procedural issues. Again, the underlying purpose, trying to prevent voter fraud, that's the goal. Convenience voting, methods to make voting easier. Convenience voting in your textbook will say something of the sorts like methods to allow voting without having to enter the voting precinct. So again, trying, just like it says, trying to make voting easier, more convenient.